Felt like I was about to sneeze. I've been trying to do a really good job. Oh, hi, by the way. Been trying to do a really good job the past 3 out of 4 days of hydrating. 64 ounces. And yes, this is plastic. I got it from Aldi's, but I realized that I am chronically dehydrated among many things. I don't have very good interoception signals or awareness of them, like especially when it comes to hunger and water. And sometimes even recognizing my tiredness, although that one tends to be more apparent. But this is great for me because it's a visualizer where it has me fill it up. I either put ice, like lemon water, or some kind of like light tea taste in it, and then it gives me like, sorry, my cat's trying to jump up, like a time measurement, so I sort of know visually where I need to be at. So I need to be at about 8 p.m. and it's 7:21, so yay. I don't know. I think I'm going to probably upload a couple videos because I had meant to be like more active, or like my desire I think outweighs my ability to produce at the speed in which I would like, for a number of reasons. Obviously having a child, an autistic child who has more profound autism, meaning that she is currently has been evaluated at level 3 and is largely nonverbal. That is improving every day. We have gone through the process of getting her an augmentative assistive communication device, and that finally arrived. We had to go through it actually took a 3-month process of assessments, just because we live in a small town. So normally it would have taken a month worth, like 3 weeks of appointments, but they were trying to be considerate of the fact that we were having to drive from a ways. So it took a bit longer, but we finally got the device. Of course, I've got to do my good research on reading to know how to use it. I mean, it's basically an iPad with an app on it, but to really understand the most of the functionality will help my daughter, navigate it. I mean, for her, it is fairly intuitive. I think because she's so young, her ability to use it will increase as she grows. For now, what matters is that she's very engaged with it. It encourages her to speak a lot more, and it also allows her to verbalize her feelings or her thoughts with some level of accuracy when she's not able to verbally communicate them. So I'm glad I got that, but I guess I wanted to make this video because when I had talked to Orion Kelly, I had showed him my older channel. I had originally contacted him like, hey, do you want to do maybe an interview? Not like I'm anybody, but I just like to talk, obviously. And he was really nice and obviously, shouted out my channel and has been very welcoming and inclusive in the community, and encouraged me to really make this channel, obviously, so that I could share my content and I have more to share to people. Because I think, when it comes to social media and this idea of like influencers in a space and there being a limited number, I don't really think in the autism community, at least I would like to hope, that there is not a goal in this space to become influencers in a field of neurodevelopmental disorders such as autism, and really that the point of speaking out, while it's beneficial for me personally to be able to externalize these feelings because I'm an external processor, it's also, I think, hopefully, as I've seen from the comments, but I've yet to have the ability to respond, is also validating for people, because other autistic people, because as we know, autism is a spectrum, and we all have different struggles within that umbrella term of autism. So some things I can relate to in some people I can't relate in some of their struggles, and vice versa. And I think that's something that I appreciate about autism. I mean, there's a lot of things I appreciate about being autistic, because since I've only ever been autistic, I don't necessarily feel like it's a curse, where I know, some people outside the community seek to like fix it and whatever. I mean, it's not easy to be autistic. Don't get me wrong. I have suffered a great deal because for a long time I have not known I was autistic and how to manage, and I'm still learning how to manage now at almost 40. Sorry, that's my dog crying. She wants to be let in so she can cuddle. But if I let her in to cuddle, she's going to like jump on my lap and like knock my computer off. So it's not going to happen right now. I forgot what I was saying. But yeah, I'm very new to this. So, you know, I think what's good, I guess what I was saying is that I feel like there's a lot of room in this space, either on, you know, if you're on social media like TikTok or Instagram or Twitter, or sorry, it's X now, or Facebook, which I'm not active on any of those. I think there's plenty of room for, you know, obviously people with autism, autistic people to speak about their experiences and create community, find community. For me, YouTube works better. A lot of the social media apps, although some people will say YouTube is social media, but I feel like it operates in a different way. It's a little more informational. It's a little more long format. It's a little less parasocial in the sense of I'm not trying to, although I think there are some obviously like lifestyle vloggers on here that try to create these unattainable aesthetic lives, but I'm really just trying to share an experience. So there's nothing in my channel, I think, where I think some people in their journey, autistic people, are more in the space of being like full-on educators and advocates because they have, you know, been diagnosed for a while. They've done a lot of research. They understand the terminology. They're very research oriented, and they've implemented a lot of those learnings into their life so they can share them in a much more, you know, relatable way. Whereas for me, I'm really just starting my journey. So, you know, I would like to say, just kind of as a disclaimer, that my channel, at least for now, is really more of a personal, you know, space for me to talk about my experiences as an autistic person, but not necessarily to be seen in any way as an expert or an educator, you know, because I don't want to mislead anybody or, you know, offer like, please, you know, like, don't take me for medical advice. I'm not a medical doctor. I'm not a psychologist or psychiatrist. I'm an autistic person. And while I know that that makes me qualified, to speak on how I experience the world, it doesn't make me necessarily clinically or medically qualified to like really speak on some of the bigger complexities I think that go along with autism. And maybe that's just my lack of self-confidence at this point where I am at in my journey. I'm sure as I continue to make videos, I will you know, the channel will grow as I grow in my journey and understanding. I mean, I would really like to share my experiences. I would like to share more about my special interests, if that is of interest to people. You know, some about like my stims, because I feel in some ways they feel a bit atypical to what I know I've seen in a lot of presentations for autistic people. You know, like, I'm a very naturally musical person. Music comes to me easily. I don't know, I guess I have perfect pitch, but that seems really weird to say, but I've always been naturally gifted in singing and in understanding melody and rhythm. I'm not good at dancing though, believe me. I'm like an awkward noodle. I cannot control my body, like limbs. I'm very SpongeBob when I dance. So not like that, but at least musically, that is really a lot of where I feel my gift is, whether it's because I'm autistic or I'm that's just my talent as a person and my genetics. My mother is a natural singer, and then coincidentally, my daughter, who has more profound autism, is also very musical. Before she could talk, and even now while she's learning to speak, her ability to, you know, match pitch and remember melody is perfect. I mean, that's a lot of how she communicates too. When she can't verbalize a show she wants to watch, she can sing it. And that's something I used to do a lot when I was little. My mom used to say that I sounded like I was deaf when I was little, when I first started speaking. And part of that is because I had chronic ear infections as a child, but I would not show pain. My eardrums would actually have ruptured multiple times. I have very narrow eardrums and have had tubes put in my ears twice, and used to have to see an ENT growing up, I have memories of that. And what was funny was, I guess it's funny, when my eardrums would rupture, like this like pussy lava would come out of it. I just remember that, like the heat of like lava coming out of it, and then having little cotton balls to help keep it from like getting all over my clothes and stuff. But my mom wouldn't know that I was necessarily having an ear infection because most kids, when they have ear infections, it's incredibly painful for them, and they will cry and they will have a fever. And while I believe I did have a fever, I would not cry or express any pain. And it was interesting because when I was going through my psychological evaluation and doing all these different kind of internet researches on my own, I did come across an article that was medical research exploring the connection and the prevalence between ear sensitivity and chronic ear problems in autistic children. And I was like so shocked because I had no idea that could possibly be a way that, signified was a marker of my autism. Or of me being autistic, because I never, cried out in pain. And despite actually having both my eardrums perforated with like tiny pinhole perforations that have not healed, I can still hear very well. And I've seen, ear doctors throughout my life. And I think part of that is because my hearing was so sensitive as a child. I remember constantly covering my ears from pain, from sound. And I think while it's not great that my eardrums have been damaged from years of chronic ear infections and swimmer's ear and different things, I don't even swim or go in the water because my ears are so sensitive. It has still kind of taken the sensitivity that my ears had and almost brought it down to a level of what I consider like normalcy. So like it's made it so that my ears are more tolerable, because on this eardrum now, from my last bout with swimmer's ear, which I had caught from teaching kids in kindergarten 2 years ago, I got tympanosclerosis, which is the hardening of the eardrum. It's like completely almost scarified now. It looks like gray and weird and doesn't really move as well because it's scar tissued. And my ears are very painful if you try to touch them. So I haven't tried to do any surgeries that they've recommended where you like patch up the holes. I'm like, I'm good. I can hear. What happens is when I start to really exert myself and breathe heavy and my heart rate gets up, air shoots out of my ears. And technically air comes in my ears too when I breathe in, but I don't know if I necessarily feel oxygenated from that. It's just like I'm blowing in and out of my nose, in and out of my mouth, and in and out of my ears. And I have seen specialist doctors. I have the medical paperwork to back this up. Of course, I was gaslit when I first brought it up to a doctor in San Francisco and told him that I have had dealt with this issue my entire life. And he said, you have a perforation in your ear. Sure, yeah, let's see. You can breathe out of your ear. Sure, yeah, let's see. Because usually a perforated eardrum leads to severe hearing loss, and I don't have that. So he put like an otoscope in my ear, I guess, if that's the thing that can like look inside your ear, and then couldn't see anything, was like, not seeing any perforations. Let me get a bigger one that can like magnify your eardrum. And then he magnified my eardrum, and it was all like on a video in front of me when I was living in Oakland, working in San Francisco at the time. And he's like, oh, wow, you're right. You have like pinhole size perforations in your eardrums. And while he couldn't necessarily see me in action because he wasn't asking me to exert myself in his office, he was able to confirm that, yes, I have holes in my eardrums. And they're so small that I think for the most part, when my, pulse is low and I'm not overexerting myself, airflow and everything comes out this area. But when I get my heart rate up and I'm trying to exercise, which is my excuse for not, I start to blow like volcanoes out of my ears, and the sound is overwhelming and very disorienting. And like I said, they offered surgery. They tried to put a piece of what is it called? Tobacco paper, like rolling tobacco paper, to try to encourage my ears to heal. But it's such an old scar that it didn't take, and it was incredibly painful for them to even barely touch the eardrum to put the paper on. So once that didn't take, and then they're like, there's surgery where we can take some of your inner ear skin and put it on the eardrum. I'm like, why? Like, I can live with these symptoms. I've lived with them in my entire life. At worst, I might have premature hearing loss. But I remember songs well, so I can sing in my head even if I can't hear at some point. And I'm just not really into, like, unnecessary, in my opinion, at this point, surgeries. I don't need it. My hearing is not suffering. I can deal with the breathing, blowing, gushing volcanoes out of my ears. Another thing I forget the technical name for it, but again, it's I don't know if it's related to autism, but it's a very strange thing, so I'm going to share it. But if I get an itch in certain places, typically in, like, my inner thighs and kind of more sensitive regions, I guess you could say, as soon as I get an itch there, my eardrums start vibrating, and that's another thing. It's almost like a brrrr, and it's very disorienting because until I, like, scratch the itch on my inner thigh, my eardrum won't stop vibrating. So that's something I've dealt with my whole life. Don't know if anybody else has ever experienced that. Don't know if it's related to me being autistic and the things I've dealt with my ear issues that can also be a sign in some people of autism, but those were the things that I dealt with. And I think coming back to what I was saying about sounding like I was sort of deaf as a child, I'm not trying to be insulting. This is something that my mother told me. Like, the way that I would communicate initially was I would say, when I wanted to watch Sesame Street, I would say, she said I was very nasally, and maybe it was because of my ears, but I'd be like, I want to watch wah, wah, wah. And so it was like really not coming forward, the sound, and I would say, I want to watch, and then instead of saying Sesame Street, I would sing the song, well, sunny days, but I'd say wah, 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 and so that's how she would know I wanted Sesame Street. And my daughter, coincidentally, although I don't think it's a coincidence, I think it's very much genetics, a lot of sometimes how she asks is through music. She started finally getting into Gabby's Playhouse, which I'm glad because I love cats, obviously. So she'll be like, hey, Gabby, do 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 do, and like she makes that little melody, so I'll know sometimes when she's thinking of it and she wants to watch it. But also I noticed that in terms of like stims, I don't recall ever being a hand flapper so much, except in extreme cases of dysregulation where my anxiety shoots through the roof, I will start to flap. So maybe that is something that I have deeply suppressed. What I have really done most of my life, I think, is maybe a masking of possibly hand flapping or other less quote-unquote socially acceptable stims. Is I'm a chronic nail biter to the point that I don't have nails on like two of my fingers, almost up to the cuticles. And I mean, my nails are very disgusting to look at to most people if you looked at them up close, because they're just incredibly short and bitten and mutilated. And I also have an issue where I like to pick the skin around my fingers and the dry skin, especially calluses on my fingers and on my toes. And it's not something I'm proud of. It's really gross, but it's also a very self-stimulating behavior. It's usually how I downregulate, especially like truthfully, like when I'm with my daughter and I'm just kind of like on call for several days in caretaker mode and I can't really take much of a break for myself to regulate. Typically at night, when she's in bed with me and she's asleep, I've got my little lamp on and I'm just kind of like picking my skin and getting out the, it has a lot to do with texture that I feel on my skin that needs to come off. Like something feels rough, something feels like it's sticking out and I have to pick at it, which I feel like tends to be also somewhat of an obsessive compulsive trait. But obviously I don't have OCD, like the full-on disorder, but it's like this this chronic need to do it. And then I've had periods of relapse where like I don't remission, where I don't pick, and I've grown my nails out before. And then what has happened is kind of like other, I guess, stims or like coping strategies have taken place. Like I went through phases where I was picking my gray hairs out, but I finally kind of stopped doing that. I I've been diagnosed with anorexia in the past, and I think to some degree there is a bit of avoidant restrictive food intake disorder, because I have a lot of weird issues around food that are not so much body related, although I do also have body dysmorphia and images and issues related to that because of trauma with over medication as a child and gaining a lot of weight and just sort of like losing my body as I knew it as a very young teenager, and like getting stretch marks long before I had children, and just feeling, very disfigured and isolated, and like my body had been taken from me by the medical industry. So sometimes I think when I haven't done my nails, like messed with my fingers, I stop doing that, or I stop pulling my hair. There have been periods where I've then become more focused on my food sensitivities, and then I start kind of losing weight, and it can be a bit, like I said, it's a bit of both. It's a bit of like targeting to the weight, although I'll say I've been in remission from any sort of ED since, long before I had my daughter. Right after I had her, I did lose a significant amount of weight, but that was just mostly due to the trauma of what happened following the aftermath of the birth of my daughter and the dissolution of my, toxic partnership. So it was kind of not so much any kind of intentional disorder or avoidant disorder. It was just I was in such grief from having had a child and all the things that happened that I don't want to get into right now, that I completely couldn't eat for like a month or so, and I lost like 50 pounds, which sounds like a lot, but I also gained weight during pregnancy. So I pretty much just like went within like 2 months of having a baby, going from being like 50 pounds over my weight to like right where I was before I had my daughter. And since then, because it's been almost 5 years now, I've slowly put on weight and I'm comfortable with it. I'm not like happy, because my clothes do kind of fit differently at times, but it's not a focus. So, I apologize if some of these things are triggering. I'll try to put a trigger warning in front of this, because I don't mean to like leave people unprepared, and I know sometimes people need that preparation depending on what headspace they're in, but I'm really just trying to communicate. Sorry, my back hurts. What my experience has been like, because I have seen a lot of the comments, and I'm gonna reply to them tonight. Like I said, I think it's just been kind of like balancing my will with my actual ability to do. Like I just learned from one of the comments, it was either in Orion's live chat the other week or in one of my comments that I've yet to respond to, but someone mentioned spoons, and I hadn't heard about the spoon thing, about thinking of your energy when you're autistic as like how many spoons you have in a day. I still struggle to gauge, how do I know how many spoons I have? But I need to do more research into that, because I think that would be something very helpful in terms of me starting to better understand my limitations. Especially the fact that I have limitations, because I think before, well, I don't think non-autistic people don't have limitations. We all have limitations. I think I was very much operating from an internalized ableist perspective, where I felt like I should be able to do certain things without knowing that I was, autistic. And I do have limitations, because it's a neurodevelopmental disorder, and it does cause me struggles in multiple areas. So I kind of forget what I was saying there. Spoons. So yeah, so I'm trying to get better at, like, when I'm with my daughter, not focusing too much on the YouTube world, because she's also at an age where she's really trying to speak and communicate, and for me as an autistic person, it gets very frustrating. I think I've heard this from others, having to be pulled back and forth out of, like, if I'm like watching something or reading something, let's say a comment or watching a video, and then she wants me to change the channel for the 50th time in an hour, or wants my attention, I can get very frustrated from the back and forth, and that's not fair to her. So, when I'm with her, when I have my energy saved to care for her for several days, my goal is really just to focus on caring for her and, you know, maybe reading and just doing things that relax me if I have the energy and the free time. And obviously, you know, doing my stims in my alone time or downtime to kind of regulate my nervous system at the end of the day. I mean, really, I wish I could kind of show you how bad these look, but it's just not something, you know, it's just something I'm very shameful of, but it's there. It's very, I have very pretty nails and hands when I don't do the things I do. But it's right now it's been pretty bad. I don't know if the medication contributes to it, or I don't know because it's hasn't been this bad since 2018. So the only thing I can really correlate, because I'm feeling better, is that I'm on medication now for the past year, and maybe there's something in it that does that. But my psychiatrist said that, you know, unless I'm on like an amphetamine, which I'm not, like Adderall or something, that usually that's what would cause those things. But I'm me, and, you know, maybe I'm just an atypical representation. I've been told I wasn't ADHD, and I'm not taking anything like that. So I'm still picking, you know, even though I'm on, you know, an anti-anxiety pills. So I don't know. I guess it's just coping. Yeah, I think I have to lift it up, but I actually have to hold it down. So I'm still learning. Also, do you like my shirt? I tend to like to have custom, like, you know, Etsy shirts or buy from local people, or mostly I thrift because I'm on a very limited budget. But before, when I had more money, this was a local person in the state I live in, and they would make like custom, well, not custom, they would do small batch screen print shirts back when I was on Instagram. I forget their name, or I would shout them out. They were kind of mean though, honestly. But they did a couple of really awesome ones, and this one was obviously the Sigourney Weaver original Alien series, and of course I love that movie. I love Alien, I love H.R. Geiger, Sigourney Weaver, so I had to get this one, and I also think it fits with, you know, being, at least for me, autistic and kind of feeling a bit alien my whole life. Like, do I even belong here? I've heard of, in the book I'm reading, I wonder if I have it with me, that like, you know, there's like other planet. I need to join that website. Let me see. I have this book really quick. Ow, my back. Do I have the book here? Maybe I left it at home. I probably did. Is this it? Ow. No. Okay, never mind. I don't have the book. I left a bunch of books at home, and I had like meant to try to make time to read, although I ended up doing a bunch of other things. I binge watched the whole first season of The Last of Us, and oh my god, I panic attack cried in some of those episodes. I won't get into it because I don't want to give it away. If you haven't watched it and might watch it, but I'm very quick to empathize with a lot of things. As a kid, I would get very emotionally dysregulated. I would hyperventilate. I would have what I now know are panic attacks, even as a little kid, like watching movies like Silent Running with Bruce Dern and these little robots, and they would get injured. Or when my dad tried to show me Star Wars, the space was overwhelming, and I would just like, I would have a panic attack, and I would like run out of the room, or I would have an emotional reaction, and I would cry. And my dad, not trying to be mean, obviously, he just didn't know I was autistic. He just thought I was like not understanding reality from movies. And he would say, "Neela, it's a movie," instead of like really trying to help comfort me. And so then I just feel kind of bad for my sensitivity. But he's a great man. He just, you know, my father is also autistic. I mean, truthfully, he's even admitted it himself, without an official diagnosis, because he's much older now, and I don't think he needs it or wants one. But I think, you know, the way that we understood this was sort of backwards. I mean, I was the first, like I said, I have another video I've yet to upload, so this will make sense once I upload that video. But I was the first in my family to really, well, I was always a problem child. I was always a sensitive child. I was always a difficult child. I had to be told, you know, my mom said a lot, like what we were doing throughout the day, like a schedule, like this is what's happening, and given time to prepare and, you know, get my head around those transitions. And if things would change, I would become very upset. And it was very hard for me to play reciprocally with others. I was very rigid. I really didn't understand other people's like emotions or autonomy. I was more focused on like my needs. Like, you know, I want to play it this way. I don't care how they want to play it, you know, so obviously it was hard for me to make friends. So yeah, I know those are some more typical like presentations of autism that I did show. I was just incredibly hyperverbal to like a problem point. My dad would say, you know, so much of what used to get me in trouble is I'd get sent to my room for my mouth and my ability to talk back, and then he would send me to my room, and I was walking to my room, I would be mumbling under my breath, well, I don't know why I need to, you know. So I know when it comes to like language communication abilities, well, I maybe had some very early on, and I think it was more related to hearing, if anything. You know, I've always been hyperverbal. I've always been, people just tell me, and I don't mean this as like a humble brag. I feel silly because I'm not I don't think I'm like super smart or anything. People are just like, you're so articulate and you really know how to speak and blah, blah, blah. And even my psychologist was like, when she scored me, and I had again, this isn't another video that I'll upload, but my score was like the highly superior verbal skills. She's like, did you read a lot as a kid? And my dad did read to me, and I did read some, but I was not a bookworm by any means. I was one of those kids that, well, I read comics a lot, so I guess it's true I did read a lot. I read comics, but when it comes to academics and like books we were assigned, I would only read books I was interested in. So like in terms of academia, I think I've said I was not interested in that, but like if I liked a book like Shabanu or what was it, the Giver, I would read that. But if I wasn't interested in reading a book, or I read Animal Farm, but like some books I didn't care to read, and then I just wouldn't read, like a Tom Sawyer, what's his name, he's here, the Huckleberry Finn, what's that guy's name? Tom Sawyer, Huckleberry Finn, Mark Twain. Those kinds of books, I was like, this is old and boring, I don't want to read this. So I wouldn't read it, and I'd be fine to like fail. So I don't really know if it's necessarily that I read a ton that made me like super hyperverbal or very articulate or whatever. I think it's just maybe one of my strengths as a person. Maybe as an autistic person, I don't know. I don't like to promote the idea that like, you know, I think Rain Man, which I don't even know if Rain Man was a representation of an autistic person, like genuinely, but, or at least the person that was portraying, they were supposed to be portraying. But, you know, I think it's perfectly acceptable to be autistic and just struggle. I think there's this perception that we're all like these savants that have like superhuman abilities, and like, nope, I'm just like pretty disabled and like idiosyncratic and neurotic and high strung and atypical, like, and I mean, yeah, I'm good at music, but I'm not great at music. I've never wanted to, like, while I played live, it's been more for me. I'm not somebody that wants to be famous, that wants to be performing in front of people. If I ever really made music in earnest, I always wanted to be like my favorite artist, who's Kate Bush, and just be like a hermit that like makes music and then just puts it out there, doesn't give interviews, doesn't do any kind of press or tours, and it's just like, here's my music. This is what I have to offer you. Take it or leave it. Here's a music video if I feel like it. But I'm not really into like celebrity culture and being adored or being, you know, that kind of one-on-one attention has always been very hard for me. You know, like eye contact has been very hard for me. Oftentimes, if I feel too many people looking at me, my eyes will start to water. I'll want to cry, which is embarrassing, especially when you're an adult. It's like a fear, anxiety response. So I'll like usually blur my vision because that's like a genetic thing. Some people look at different spots in the head, but I can actually just blur my eyes and kind of not really see you clearly. So I can look at you, but I'm not actually seeing you. Don't know how good that is for my vision, but you know. And yeah, so on that note, like, you know, I would never really like, attention. I didn't like happy birthday as a child. I would cry, and so they couldn't sing happy birthday to anyone, not even me, and that started very young. And then what was funny, I mean, kind of funny in the sense of like interesting, peculiar funny. My daughter was fine with happy birthday until about this past year when she turned 4, and we sang happy birthday, and we'd been preparing her for it, and she liked the song. But the day that it came, and there was just a few family that I am close to for her birthday, and we sang happy birthday, she shut it down. And I didn't realize it quickly enough, but I did once she smacked me in the face because she wanted us to stop. And so it was a wake-up moment where yeah, she's my daughter, and again, she also exhibits similar sensitivities, but more profoundly than I do, at least in the language department. She's much more like openly stimming and much more, I think, coordinated. You know, she's like very beautiful and graceful in the way she just moves around, and I was never that. I'm kind of like a weird, one of those inflatable noodle tube mans. I like on It's Always Sunny, the dancing inflatable tube man. And what else? Like my dad used to teach us soccer, because, you know, we're from Latin America and that's like the thing that they do. And so he coached my soccer team when I was little. And I loved that, you know, because I love my dad. I look up to him. I looked up to him so much as a child. But he had a lot of expectations for me, or maybe at least I felt that. I don't know if he actually did. He's really nice. And I was a terrible player. I mean, I didn't like being in the sport because, like, I wasn't very coordinated. I'm not very competitive. I don't want to be up in people's spaces. And also, a game is a very public event where people are watching you. And I don't want to be in performance like that. So I did it, maybe not necessarily knowing, you know, that was hard for me, but I guess I did on some level know it was hard for me because during games when I would play, you know, of course my mom and my siblings and stuff would show up and they would say, you know, go Neela, go Neela. I was a fullback, right? A foldback. I just sat by the goal and talked to my friend and distracted him until my dad would be like, Neela, pay attention, the ball's coming, you know? And I'd be like, you know, I gotta do something, but I wouldn't do anything. I was not a good player. And he was just like, what the heck? I just wanted to like talk and not be there. But when I did have to perform and saw a ball was coming my way and I was like, oh no, of course my family would be like, go Neela. And I did not like that. And so very quickly, I don't know if it was after the very first game that we did that, but I very early on, and I was probably like, you know, 7 or 8 or something. I wasn't very old, 9, I don't know. I really don't know the ages here. But I told them, you know, please don't cheer for me by my name. I don't know exactly how I said it, but I said, it just drew too much attention to me, and I felt like everybody knew. Well, I guess they would because we were a small team, who I was. So if you were saying go Neela, although of course other people are cheering for their kids, but let's say I have the ball in the moment and they'd say go Neela, then I feel like all eyes are on me. And so I worked it out in my head where I asked my parents to call me Lily, and to only scream go Lily, because I thought if people only knew me as Neela, obviously, because that's my name, and then my parents were screaming Lily, I thought maybe it would take the heat off of me and they would think that they were cheering for somebody else, even though it would time up with the part where I maybe had the ball. So, I mean, it made no sense, but in my mind as a child, it was obviously a way for me to alleviate the extreme sensory overwhelm I felt from trying to play sports and participate in very public spaces with a lot of people around, which I've never been good at, but I haven't been completely aware of how much that's affected me, you know, because I didn't know I was dealing with autism. I just thought I was a sensitive problem child or whatever people had told me, you know, when I was little, or whatever I had internalized from people's reactions. Not necessarily, I think that people thought that of me. Sometimes I think it's just my own negative voice thinking that of myself, but so all that's to say is that I just think, you know, I really, I had my own coping strategies way back then without knowing, like, what I was really dealing with. And now looking back, it's just kind of funny. I mean, I only really participated in soccer, because I I wanted to please my dad, and not because he was a man to please by any means, but I think being mixed, I've always felt like, and being closer to my dad's side, which is the native Andean Bolivian side, I've always wanted to like be, because I was born in America and not there, and raised here and have this culture and not as much that culture. I've always just wanted to like prove, and do as much as I can to be like of this other place that I feel I belong to, yet not quite. So I think I participated in soccer not out of his own pressure, but just the pressure I put on myself to try to fit in, and to I mean, of course, because my friends were on the team too, so it was also a social thing, and I was excited about it, but looking back, I realized some of the more like psychological personal implications that were driving that I didn't necessarily have like the conscious awareness of as an adult. So yeah, I think I've said a lot. I had planned on making a video today, and then the day got away from me. Some days I just feel really tired, and it sucks. I don't know why. That's partly why I'm trying to hydrate. I've been dealing with a lot of sweaty palms and feet, and the brain fog, which I have to still respond to comments, but someone had told me is possibly perimenopause, which I totally appreciate that comment, by the way. I forget who wrote it, but a shout out to you, because by no means I'll respond to you, but by no means was I like insulted or felt like that was an overshare. I was really grateful for that validation, because I've thought for a while now that I might be perimenopausal. I mean, I'm almost 40. I'm 39, and I'll be 40 in February. So I think my hormones are changing, and you sharing that comment actually helped to really validate me. And unfortunately, because of my Medicaid, my lady gynecological appointment won't be until July of this year. But at that time, I'll be able to get, I'm going to ask for a hormone panel, because I think I need to see where I'm kind of at in my, reproductive cycle, because that's another thing that I'm a little afraid of, because puberty was really hard with autism. It didn't help that I was bullied, but I'm really kind of scared of menopause, or even perimenopause, being hard on me, and how it could affect not only the disorders I suffer with, like PTSD and rejection, hypersensitivity, dysphoria, but also even just like the autism. And because I think I'm finally only recently finding some stability and equilibrium, because I have an effective treatment plan, and am educated with what I'm actually dealing with, that I'm an autistic person, and I'm not bipolar, and I'm a problem, so I'm scared, but I'm trying to find balance, this before I had a few days off, I was with my daughter, and I spent a couple days trying to just re-regulate before I came on here and did anything. I'm going back tomorrow, and because I needed that, and I have to not like push myself beyond my limits. But I'm still struggling when I'm with my child to sort of know my limits, because obviously as a parent, even if I am an autistic parent, I understand that I need support, and my parents are really willing to give me support because they recognize that I need it. But I still put a lot of pressure on myself to take the brunt of the workload, because they're older, and this is my responsibility. She's my responsibility. But I'm learning that sometimes not asking for help soon enough can be to my own detriment. And like an example of me kind of not managing my spoons was on like the day before I left last week. Was it last week? Yeah. No, it was this week. Sorry, I like don't know what day it is. I decided that day that, well, first she had a school, so that was like one thing. We had to get up early, get her to her therapy. She has occupational and speech first thing, and then she goes into the regular classroom and gets to play with kids for a little bit. So she had school first thing, and that's taxing on her, that's taxing on me. We have to get up, well, she wakes up at like 5, but we at least have to get her up with enough time to really give her the time to transition to that activity. Even though she likes it, she still fights to get dressed, fights to get out the door, fights when you leave her there. It's the transitions are difficult. So we're working through that because she does have a delay. She is almost 5, but she is closer to like 2 and 3. I mean, not necessarily in her intelligence. She's incredibly intelligent, but just in her like emotional, maybe intelligence, like her ability to regulate herself. She's still very baby. And I was like that too. I was very baby. I still feel very baby. I mean, not like in that I want to wear a diaper and live in a crib, but like, I don't think, and I don't know if other autistic people feel like this, but I still feel very much like a child. Maybe not like a little child, but I definitely hold on to my childhood very closely because it's probably when I felt safest, when I was cared for and less responsibility was put on me as a disabled person, because I feel disabled personally because of what I've dealt with. Not saying that autistic people are all necessarily disabled. Some of you may not agree with that statement, but I very much feel disabled and encumbered by a lot of what I deal with, and I'm not able to exist in the world in a neurotypical sense. At least I haven't been for some years. There was a long time that I was, but I can't anymore. But anyway, all that is to say is, I was taking her to school, and I have a lot of anxiety about leaving her at school because obviously with the state of our country, the United States, and of course we know the things that have been happening at school and very little legislation to try to protect kids. And I was the generation of Columbine. That happened when I was in right before I dropped out, I think. Yeah, so it was very, and I studied it as a teacher. I had to read a book on Columbine to understand like teenage psychology since I was a secondary education, post-baccalaureate, whatever. But what was I saying? Oh yeah, so I took her to school, and then after that, I believe we like went to the library. And then I took her back home. We had lunch, and then I wanted to give her a bath. Because, she doesn't have baths every day. It's just too difficult because she does fight, but like every other day kind of thing. It's also because changing is a bit of a struggle at this point. So we try not to tax her too much until she's able to communicate better and we're able to find a more regulated system that isn't going to put her in states of dysregulation. Because, I mean, a baby's not throwing up a funk after, a day or two, believe me. I mean, they might like a little funk, but little baby funk, they're not stinky like adults like us completely. So, we'll just wipe her and things like that. But, so I had decided I was going to give her a bath because I had wanted her to visit my aunt and my uncle on my dad's side. They live on the same property as us in a different home. We're very close-knit, and I hadn't seen them since the new year, and I'm very close to her. She's my godmother. I named my child after her. She's like a second mother to me. I had 2 aunts. One passed away, and she was also very close to me. I was very close to her, but my aunt Isabel is the only one I have left, so we've obviously grown much closer in the decades since my Aunt Yoli passed. I still miss her very much. She was also awesome. But so I was going to bring my daughter there, and I'd been kind of avoiding it because truthfully, like, I don't mind going to my aunt's house by myself because I just have to be responsible for myself, and it's not necessarily a very child-proof home. It's a home of 80-year-old people that are, getting older, and they have 2 cats, and it's just that's it. It's just not a familiar environment for my daughter, not really a family-friendly environment. It's no slight against them. I mean, that's just the reality. They haven't had kids in a while, and they shouldn't have to do anything because they're really old and they have their own struggles. So usually I bring her there because it's just less taxing for them to have to walk because my aunt has struggles walking. And so, but I'd been avoiding it, I think, because I find, I guess without acknowledging it, I find it to be very overwhelming, sensory overwhelm for me, because I'm both trying to navigate having like a social conversation, and to a degree, like, I'm very close with my aunt, but I still have to put on a bit of a mask. I would say it's more like code switching, maybe not as much as masking, because I have a way of being with my Latin native Spanish side of the family versus being with like my primary mixed Bolivian dad and American mom. And my dad is very American too. He's been here for most of his life. But it's just that familiarity. It's not to say I'm not comfortable with them. It's just a different way of interacting. There's in Latin families, you know, there's a lot of respect and a lot of like, we're very close knit. We're very communal. So that's been really great because I have so much support, where I think maybe in a lot of like, Western American individualism kind of overrides that, and I don't see as much of that normalized, although now with like the economic downturn, more people are having to rely on their parents. But at least for me, I don't feel bad because it's very much a cultural thing. Like, you live with your parents, your grandma, your aunt, your uncle. Like, we live in a community and we support each other. So at least for that, I don't feel shame. I feel very culturally aligned with my paternal side in doing that. And if my daughter chooses to live with me and forever, I mean, I'd be happy, you know. I hope I can live with her if she'll let me. I plan to take care of my parents and to take care of my aunt. It's just the way that we are, you know. We don't really do nursing homes and things like that, you know. It's just not in our culture. Not to say that's anything negative. I'm getting on a tangent. But anyway, sorry, I'm looking at a bug over there. So I knew I was kind of avoiding taking my daughter there because it's a lot easier for me to go there by myself and just talk to my aunt and get to talk. But when I bring my daughter, I'm like trying to manage her from not picking up every little piece of crud she may find on the floor, play with cat toys, which I don't really mind, but it freaks out my aunt and uncle because they're old, and yes, bacteria. And you know, I'm trying to get her to be entertained with something on the TV and play with the toys she has, and not necessarily things that are breakable. And I'm doing this all in a small space, trying to keep her in the quarantine appropriate space, you know, not walk into their bathroom or their bedroom. Not that they would be mad about it, but like, that's not where we're having a conversation, right? So it's a lot of energy for me to like both try to socialize with my aunt and my uncle and be attentive and present to their conversation and give them attention, and then also allow them to see my child, but then also have to be in the mother mode and keeping my child safe. And my aunt's a bit hard of hearing, so often she'll just keep talking while my daughter's like climbing up the wall. And so then it becomes really overwhelming because I'm like trying to do two things at once. And so that was kind of the situation that happened the other day, where I realized I had been avoiding it, and I didn't want to avoid it any longer because I wanted to see her and my aunt. And I brought Luna, and after I visited for an hour and came back to my house with Luna, you know, I had like I don't know if it was burnout, meltdown. I just started hyperventilating and crying like a baby. Like, I was just tired. I just like overdone it. And I called my mom and we talked through it, and my dad came over, and my daughter was fine. She was happy. She was watching TV, not even aware of my emotions, you know, because she's in her own little world. And she's happy. She was more sad to leave, you know, even though she was kind of a pill while we were there. Again, it's just the transitions. But, you know, I didn't really realize in the moment that I'd given away too many spoons. I'd given away all my spoons, and maybe more spoons than I had to give, because bathing is a lot for me to do. It has to do with my fingers. It has to do with some of my like possibly, I guess you could call OCD tendencies. I'm just a little bit like, I mean, I feel bad to say it, but just I get kind of grossed out by certain things, you know, dirty water, stuff like that. But I try to deal with those things because obviously I need to bathe my child, but all those things cost me. So, you know, I had tried to do a lot of different things in the day, take her to school, you know, get all that done in a very quick turnaround time. Library, which is chasing her around, food, of course, throughout the day, because she needs to be fed. A little bit of rest for me. I did take about an hour nap, but I think really where I learned, my lesson learned was, you know, I shouldn't have brought her to my aunt's that night. I shouldn't have caved to my own like pressure and expectation that I'm like, I'm obligated. And so the lesson from that, you know, after kind of just getting help, and my dad taking my daughter, and she just, you know, spends the night at my grandpa's next door, my grandparents. It's not a big deal. There's her second home. We're right next door to each other. And then I went to bed at like literally 6:00. I took I was having a panic attack. I was hyperventilating, and I just went to sleep because I was just overtired. And later we kind of reconvened as a team, my family, and I was able to realize, you know, I'm like, yeah, I was almost like a little baby. Like, I just needed to go to bed. You know, I just overdone it, but I'm still struggling to know where that level is. But at least the lesson learned was, you know, not so many things in a day. If I feel the pressure to meet some sort of familial expectation, which I think I'm largely placed on myself, although I know my aunt does get lonely, I think it would be fair to just ask my aunt, you know, and uncle if he would just drive them over to my house, because it'd just be right around the street, and then they wouldn't have to walk, and then they could come to a space that's child-proof, so that you know, my daughter would be more comfortable and safe in the environment. So I would still have to maybe navigate some, like, keeping her from doing things, but overall the space is set up for her, and it would make it much easier for me then to have the socialization aspect with my family while tending to my child, and maybe avoiding so quickly overdoing it for myself. So this is an hour-long video. It's kind of depressing. I don't want to make hour-long videos because I don't know if people actually want to watch them. I'll watch them if it's content I find relevant, but at least for me, my negative self-talk just makes me think I'm rambling into the abyss, which isn't bad. I'm an external processor. I think a lot of autistic people are, but I was told that by my therapist. I have to get it out of me to kind of understand and really process. So my mom is like a really important sounding board for me to kind of like word vomit, and then she can help reflect back what I'm actually feeling, because I've struggled for a long time. I'm getting better, but I've struggled for a long time at like identifying my sensory needs, like hunger, sleep, thirst, even like happy, sad. I think I'm pretty good with sad and angry, but it's hard for me to know like the cause of things, or like to know that it's happening in the moment. I don't know. Like I used to say I felt very emotionally blind, you know, and I'm learning more. And I think a lot of that came from like DBT and CBT that I've engaged in the past, and just like general maturity. I think we all really develop at different paces, and I personally, for myself, well, I think I'm, you know, intelligent enough. I don't think I really became a mature adult until, you know, I was like in my early 30s, mid 30s, especially once I became a mom. I was like really thrust into a new level of consciousness. So, that's all I think I really have to say. My dad's texting me, so I'm getting distracted. And so I'll try to come up with a clever title for this. I've actually got like another video to upload that's also like an hour long. And I also wanted to make another video, so I might try to come up with like 3 videos to throw at y'all for the week of silence that's about to come. But I think first I'll respond to comments and rewatch this, and I'm going to be up late because my sleep is weird. I'm like, I slept for a couple hours, so I know I'll be up for a while. And look, it's Pepita. It's Nugget. All right, anyway, I will talk to you all later. If you were able to watch this far, thank you very much. It actually really means a lot to me, just that somebody's listening to me. Truthfully, that's really it. Just the fact that it's somebody else cares to hear what I'm going through, and I don't mean to like center myself, because I know there's like so much suffering in the world, but I do just appreciate anybody that bothers to watch any length of this video, but especially the entirety. And for all of your comments from previously, from Orion Kelly's shout out, from just the community really being open and welcoming, and just really helping me, I think, in a lot of ways to find healing and community, and in a way that, while I'm a little bit hesitant, I just feel positive about, and don't think I've really encountered before. So I'm very grateful. I hope you're all doing well. I hope if this resonates with you, you can like, and if you have anything relevant you'd like to say, please comment respectfully, and I would love to hear from you. Also video ideas, if there's anything I touch on that you want me to talk more about, I'd be happy to do that. I'm a pretty open book. And if you haven't subscribed and you'd like to, of course, there's that option. That would be great. So yeah, have a great day wherever you are in the world, and take care until next time when I make another video that's probably in the same exact shirt and setting, but just released on a different day. Okay, yeah, bye.